Imagine walking through a field with three other people. It's not a hike. It's not a special occasion. You're just moving together, the way you always move, because that's how you survive out here. The ground beneath you is soft, fresh volcanic ash, recently fallen, still wet enough to hold a shape. Every step you take gets pressed into it and preserved. You don't know that. You're just walking. Maybe a child is with you, stepping carefully in the tracks of the adult ahead because that's easier than making new ones. And then, without any of you knowing it, that walk gets frozen in time for the next 3.6 million years. That's not a metaphor. That actually happened. In 1978, in a place called Laetoli in Tanzania, a research team led by Mary Leakey found exactly this: a trail of footprints pressed into hardened ash, showing at least two, maybe three, individuals walking side by side. Some of the footprints are large, some are smaller. And for decades, people have looked at this trackway and asked the same question: was this a family? Today, when you think of family, you think of a house, a dinner table, maybe an argument about homework. But 3.6 million years ago, family didn't look anything like that. It looked like a group of small, hairy, upright walking primates moving across an open plain, completely exposed, with almost nothing standing between them and a world that wanted to eat them. And figuring out how that group functioned, who stayed together, who protected who, how children were raised, might be one of the most important puzzles in all of human evolution. So let's go back, not to the footprints yet, but a little further, to a species called Australopithecus afarensis, the same species Lucy belonged to, discovered in Hadar, Ethiopia. Lucy, found in 1974, gave scientists a nearly complete skeleton of a single individual. But just 1 year later, in 1975, the same research team found something even stranger. Not one skeleton, at least 13. Scattered across a single hillside, in the same layer of rock, all roughly the same age, all the same species. The site is called AL333. Researchers nicknamed it the first family. Adults and children buried together, or at least died together, around 3.2 million years ago. And once you know that name, the questions basically write themselves. Were these people actually related? Did they die at the same moment? And if they did, what could kill an entire group all at once? There are a few competing theories, and none of them are simple. One idea is flooding. A flash flood moving through a river channel, catching a group in the open and sweeping them away together, which would explain why so many individuals ended up buried in the same narrow strip of sediment. Geologists who studied the layers at AL333 found evidence of exactly that kind of environment. A channel that flooded seasonally, gently, not catastrophically, which complicates the flash flood idea but doesn't rule it out entirely. Another theory is drought, a dry season concentrating animals, including this group, around the last remaining water source where a mass die-off or a predator ambush could take out several individuals close together. And that leads to the third theory: predation. Fossilized bones with tooth marks, broken and gnawed sections. Some researchers believe a group of these hominins may have been killed together in a single predator attack, or scavenged after the fact by animals that found the bodies before they were buried. Here's the part that matters most, though. Whatever killed them, something kept these individuals together long enough and close enough to die in the same place. Whether that's a family in the way you and I would use the word is still debated. But it's evidence of a group that moved together, and by extension probably lived together. Now go back to those footprints at Laetoli. For a long time, the popular interpretation was simple and almost sentimental. A father figure out front, a mother behind him, maybe carrying a child. The original family portrait, 3.5 million years before anyone invented the concept. It made for a great museum display. It's also According to more recent research, probably too neat. A 2011 reanalysis of the site suggested the trackway wasn't necessarily a group traveling together at all. It might be several individuals who happened to walk the same path at different times, because that stretch of ground was simply the easiest route across the landscape. More recent biomechanical research went even further, comparing the spacing and synchronization of the footprints to how modern humans walk side by side. Couples who walk arm in arm tend to match their stride length, even with a big height difference between them. Parents walking next to children usually don't. When researchers ran the numbers on the Laetoli tracks, the pattern lined up more closely with two adults walking closely together than with a parent and a child, which means the most famous first family footprints on Earth might not show a family at all. They might show something else entirely. A pair bond, two adults, walking in sync, the same way people who are close to each other still walk today. And that's honestly the more interesting finding, because it points towards something bigger than one trackway. If two individuals were walking in physical sync 3.6 million years ago, that's not just locomotion, that's coordination. That's two bodies moving as a unit, because their owners had some kind of bond worth maintaining. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, don't organize their social groups this way. Male chimps typically stay in their birth troop for life, while females move between groups. There's very little of what you'd call a stable, monogamous pairing. But something changed on the path toward humans. Some researchers believe upright walking itself is part of the answer. Once you're bipedal, you can't carry an infant on your back the way a chimpanzee mother does while knuckle walking. You have to carry it in your arms, which means your hands are full, which means you need help, a partner, a group, someone bringing food back instead of everyone foraging entirely alone. Bipedalism may not have just changed how early hominins moved. It may have forced them to need each other in a completely new way. This is where the first family idea stops being about a single fossil site and starts being about something structural. A 3.5 million year old shift toward cooperative child rearing, food sharing, and long-term partnerships, all pieced together. Not from a single dramatic discovery, but from the accumulation of small, quiet evidence. 13 sets of bones on a hillside in Ethiopia, 2 sets of footprints in hardened ash in Tanzania, a stride pattern that matches how a couple walks today. None of it proves a nuclear family the way we'd picture one now. But it points towards something just as important. Long before language, before fire, before tools got sophisticated, our ancestors were already organizing their lives around each other. Not as isolated individuals wandering the savannah alone, but as small, interconnected units, walking the same paths, raising children together, and in at least one case, dying together. Close enough in the same patch of ground that millions of years later, we'd still be able to tell they never left each other's side. And maybe that's the real discovery buried in all of this. Not a specific mother, father, and child frozen in ash, but proof that the instinct to stay close to the people who matter to you isn't a modern invention. It's not even a human invention. It's older than our species, older than our genus. It was there before we could speak, before we could paint, before we'd even fully stood up straight. The first family wasn't a discovery site. It was an idea our ancestors were already living out, one footstep at a time, long before any of us were around to give it a name.